Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar on the QuerySurge Power BI Wizard. My name is Bill Hayduck. I'm the CEO of RTTS, which is QuerySurge's parent company. I have with me Mike Calabrese, who will be presenting today, and Chris Thompson, who will be monitoring any questions. Both are senior solution architects that are experts in data validation and ETL testing. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat window. We'll answer as many questions as we can after the presentation. We'll also use chat to alert us if there are any issues seeing or hearing this session. And then thanks again for your time and participation. And now we're ready to start. Mike, all yours.
All right, thank you very much, Bill. Great to be with everyone today. Excited to talk about QuerySurge's newest feature, the Power BI Wizard, and let's get started. All right, so on the agenda today, we'll do a brief slide presentation before jumping into the live demo, and we'll talk about just the basics of QuerySurge, a little background on the tool, and we'll discuss some of the BI report testing challenges that you may face and how QuerySurge can help alleviate those challenges. And then finally, as I mentioned, we'll jump into the live demo of our Power BI Wizard. So we'll set the stage here with just a couple of quotes. The first one from Gartner: poor data quality now costs organizations an average of $14 million annually. And that's, a big concern. If you're using your data, as Carly says here, to turn data information into insight, that's a concern, because when we look at the C-level executive office and critical data, these BI reports are being used to make critical decisions. And it's not only the C-level, it's managers all across the organization and business users that are using this information to make those decisions. And the assumption is that the underlying data is fine, and we know that it's not. And the reason being is because these BI reports are being populated from numerous different data sources, whether it's a big data lake, a data warehouse. Information is being fed and transferred all over the organization to ultimately end up in these types of reports. And anytime data is moved through a data source, that's the typical areas where we'll see issues arise. So what can we do to verify data and make sure that it is moving correctly, especially when it gets into these BI intelligence and analytics types of reports? That's where QuerySurge comes in. So QuerySurge is the smart data testing solution that leverages AI to automate ETL testing of data warehouses, big data lakes, and, as we'll see today, business intelligence reports. The AI component of QuerySurge is also one of our newest features, and that was actually a topic of our previous webinar. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I suggest you go over to QuerySurge.com and view our previous webinar where we discuss the different functionalities and features available with QuerySurge. So QuerySurge has 6 basic supported business initiatives. Today, we'll focus in on testing the BI and analytics efforts and look at how we can help our customers achieve data confidence and data validation in those BI reports. And speaking of customers, we do have over 200 customers in 30 countries all around the world. And the thing I want to point out here is that it's not just focused in on one particular industry or vertical. We have customers all across the spectrum that are utilizing QuerySurge for their data validation and testing efforts. So where does QuerySurge fit into your data strategy? Well, we'll first talk a bit about how QuerySurge works. And QuerySurge can connect to any 2 points at one time, whether that's a database, a data warehouse, any number of different types of flat files or Excel files, and, as we'll see today, business intelligence reports. Once connecting, it can then pull down the result sets from both your source and target data and compare the result sets to find or identify any anomalies or differences. If QuerySurge is finding any of those issues, it's able to alert team members or stakeholders to those issues so that they hopefully get resolved before any major impacts are realized within your organization. Let's take a look at the basic data testing process first from the developer's perspective. So anytime data is moved from one system to another, there are usually mapping requirements or instructions for how that data should be moved. And the ETL developer is responsible for coding that movement, orchestrating a pipeline to make sure that data is organized as expected based off of those mapping requirements. From a tester's perspective, it's sort of a same type of view. Anytime data is moved, there's an opportunity for issues to arise. So each time data is moved from one system to another, we look at that as a testing point for QuerySurge. And in particular, today we'll focus in on testing point 4 that you see in the diagram, where we're comparing underlying data that's populated in a data mart against a Power BI report, as we'll see in the demo. Just a bit about the QuerySurge environment. QuerySurge is a Web 2.0 based application. Users can access the tool using their favorite browser. The tool itself installs on Red Hat Linux or Windows and can be installed on a bare metal server, a VM, or in your own private cloud, but always behind your firewall, behind your security mechanism, such that you and only you have access to the data being tested and stored within QuerySurge. The QuerySurge agent component, that's responsible for going out and establishing the connections with your different data sources. And that's going to connect through JDBC drivers, which allows us to pretty much connect to anything out there in the marketplace today, including Power BI. So speaking of BI reports and the challenges in testing them, I'll first start off with a quote that I certainly have heard in one form or another on the testing projects I've worked on. It only takes one or two people saying, I don't trust the data, to invalidate a report, and that can certainly tank the whole project. So how do we instill that confidence and ensure that the data being displayed in these reports is actually valid? Some of the most common use cases to test that data involve comparing visualizations, the data displayed in those visualizations, to the underlying backend data stores to make sure they're being represented properly. Comparing one report to another, whether you're migrating from dev to QA or up to the higher environments, UAT and production, making sure that as the reports progress, that they're representing the information properly, ensuring that the reports have been updated. If you're dealing with real time or updates that happen on a regularly scheduled basis, you want to make sure that those are represented properly as well. And then finally, comparing different trends. For example, if you see a spike in sales that is outside of the norm, that may be an indication in your report that the data populating that report, something has gone awry. So how do we test all of these different use cases? Well, what we see out there is some of the most common validation methods include what we like to call stare and compare. Where you have, let's say, dual monitors, and on your left-hand side, you have a SQL analyzer or an Excel export of the underlying data, and you're then trying to match that up visually with a report that's on your right-hand screen. As we know, that is a manual process that can be very tedious and is prone to errors. Another solution that testers usually try to implement is using a functional automation tool, something like Selenium, to try and automate the process. Problems with that include Selenium is really designed, or functional automation tools aren't really designed to test data in bulk. So once you get into the thousands, hundreds of thousands, and millions of data points, which sometimes these reports are populated with, the tool itself cannot handle that type of load. And that's where QuerySurge's BI tester comes in. It's going to provide a successful approach to solving the problem of testing the data that's embedded within your BI solution. And the QuerySurge BI tester supports 6 of the major business intelligence solutions out there today. But for our purposes, our demo today, we're going to focus in on Power BI. And the reason we are is because we have a brand new feature called the Power BI Wizard. And this really simplifies the process of being able to create test in QuerySurge against your Power BI visualizations. Also has the ability to pass in slicer settings, so you can do those different types of filter testing and validations for all your reports within your Power BI workspace or reporting suite. If you are interested in like what you see today, you can head on over to QuerySurge.com, and there we were able to download a free trial of QuerySurge with the BI Tester add-on enabled. Also, if you want to have maybe a more in-depth one-on-one type discussion with your team, we do offer private demos where we'll have a 60-minute virtual meeting with your team and our experts, and on that we can cover all the different functionalities and features within QuerySurge and answer any specific questions you may have about your environment and how QuerySurge can help you. All right, so let's get started with the demo. I'll stop sharing for a moment while I bring up my demo environment, and we will get started. All right. So what I have up on this screen right now is one of the example reports that we'll be looking at today. I have this in a BI workspace. This report has 3 different pages, as you can see here, with different visualizations on AdventureWorks data that provides executive summary on sales information. All the data that we see within these reports, if we switch over to the workspace view, we can see it's being sourced from a SQL Server data mart. That SQL Server data mart resides in a sample Azure cloud instance, small subset of tables. All of these tables that we see here contain data and information that we're going to be looking at for populating these different BI reports. So the main metrics are included in the sales table, and they join together with several other tables here to provide that category information that we see in our AdventureWorks sales report here. So to start, let's go over now to our QuerySurge application. And I have pre-built a few query pairs in here that we can see. And we have, just give that a quick refresh and come into our BI validations folder here. So to start, we're going to take a look at a particular visualization. That's going to be this category visualization that we see here. And on the left-hand side, I've already pre-populated the SQL queries that we're going to go against the data mart here. And on the right-hand side, we have some SQL information that's going to go against the Power BI report. So QuerySurge's BI tester uses a specific function that takes in certain parameter information of the report to extract the information from the visualization. So prior to the BI wizard, I would have to do some research and understand the different IDs that are associated with those visualizations. But now with the Power BI wizard itself, that is all involved directly within the wizard. So as you can see, I just launched the Power BI wizard. That is available for any time you have a Power BI connection within your query pair by just clicking on this Power BI wizard button. And as I traverse through here, the wizard, it's going to load up all of the workspaces that I have access to based on my connection. We're going to select the QuerySurge BI workspace here. And then in that workspace, we have 2 reports. We're going to select the AdventureWorks sales report. And then there are also options for row level security. This report does not have row level security enabled, so we're going to leave those blank and go ahead and click next. And now what's going to happen is this report is going to be loaded directly into the wizard and allow me to visually select which visualizations I'd like to test. So I'll go ahead and maximize that so we can view it a little bit better. So if I wanted to cover all of the pages in the report, I can certainly cycle through here and set up different tests to validate everything that's being contained within this BI report. As I mentioned, we're going to focus in on this category report down here in the bottom left. And each of these visualizations, I can right click on and view some information. So by viewing the details here, we can see some of that information that was utilized in the SQL query. But I can also just go directly to replacing the SQL in the editor. So it's really just a sort of 2-click operation to get the SQL into the query pair that I need to run and execute this report. So as you can see now, after doing that, we've got the SQL we need. And if we were interested now in running the test against this report, we could come over to our Design Time Run tab. And this is a useful tab that's available on every query pair. If you're looking to, as you're developing your test, see what type of data you're getting back, you're maybe wanting to do a one-off ad hoc type of run, that's what the Design Time Run tab is really useful for. So as we can see, this query pair is running. It's going out against the source side, which is our data mart. It's bringing that information back that has completed. The target side is going against the Power BI, excuse me, the Power BI report. And as we will wait for that to come back, once that does return, as it has just now, QuerySurge will compare the source and the target results to identify any differences between them. So once this analysis completes, we can see that actually the data between our source side and our target side has aligned perfectly. If I wanted to see what those results look like, I could come over here and we can see that both the source and the target side are aligning with all of our data. So that is considered a successful test. We know that the data represented in our BI report matches what we have in our data mart. Come over now to another example here where we're going to deal with the filtering capabilities of the Power BI wizard. So I've already configured the first two tests. We'll come in and configure the third here. As you can see, I have the SQL already developed for the data mart side. Now it's time to go ahead and use the wizard to develop the Power BI side. So again, we'll select the same workspace and the same report, and we'll click next. And while that report loads, we'll come over to this report. We're actually going to focus on this sales amount by region report. As I mentioned, I developed the North America and Pacific regions already, and we'll look to develop the test for the European region as well. So the nice thing about the wizard, if I go ahead and maximize this again, is that this is there is interactivity available here. So I can actually configure the filters that I'm looking to test directly within QuerySurge. So for the European region, I know based off of my requirements and my geography that France, Germany, and UK are going to be the ones that I want to select here. And I can then right click on this visualization, and instead of selecting the default SQL option, which is what I did in the first example, I'm going to select SQL with filtering and replace those contents within my query pair. And here we can see some additional parameters being passed to our Power BI report function, and those parameters are going to specify the filters that I selected in the wizard. So this is a great way to test combinations of filters within your reports. As you can see, we're cycling through. If I go back to our different reports here, the different regions. Now, instead of running this as a design time run, I'm going to come over to QuerySurge's scheduling module, and I'm actually going to create a test suite. So we'll call this filter test. And within the scheduling module, we can add in any number of query pairs to a test suite. And actually, I'm just going to drag that whole filter test folder over. Go ahead and save that and kick off this test suite. So at the point in time you're ready to do some more formal testing, maybe this is going to be part of a regression run or a migration effort, you want to use suites and scenarios to organize your tests so that they can all run at one particular time. And we can see that the filter test scenario has been scheduled. It is starting to run right now. It is about 50% complete. I'll go ahead and double click on this scenario where we can see all the query pairs that are part of the scenario. So really with this test, I'm exercising the different filter functions for the different regions for that visualization. And we're testing each one to make sure that they represent the proper data as it relates to our underlying BI data mart here. You can see we're starting to get some results back, and I can actually click into these results to see what has gone wrong. It looks like this Pacific region has failed. The North American region has passed. If I want to see what exactly has failed, similar to the design time run, I can come over to this failures tab, and QuerySurge has identified a particular issue for us around this specific sales numbers, and it looks like there is a decimal precision issue for this particular value. You can see we're going out to 2 decimal precision lengths on the source side, and we only have 1 on the target side, which is our Power BI visualization. And coming over to the European region test, we're actually not seeing any values at all here. So that's an indication that something has gone wrong in our report, in the development of a report. And if we actually take a look at the data model for the report itself, we can see that the information, there was an error in creating the measurements that are part of this report. So if we take a look at the European sales metric here, we can see that our developer has made a slight spelling mistake, and that's made its way into that report visualization, which could cause some issues there. And looking at the Pacific one, we can see that the decimal precision has been set to 1, where really based on our requirements and what we're seeing should be set to 2. So making those types of changes will update those results, and it's really a good showcase of how QuerySurge can find what seem like small issues in the setup and configuration of your BI report, but can really impact the values and the data that's being displayed in the report. So now that I've made those changes and I rerun the test, I would expect to see, if I come back to the report and let's do a little refresh here. Visually, I should be able to see some differences here in the report, and also QuerySurge should be able to, after it runs and executes that test, come up with a passing value. So we can see now, previously we weren't seeing that European sales line. And if we hover over the data points and look at the tooltips, we can see that the Pacific sales now go out to those 2 decimal places that we see there. And once that completes, I would expect to see that all the tests in this filter test now would pass. And it does look like we are getting some additional errors here. So we'll have to take another look and send that off to our BI report developers to try and understand what the issue is here. So coming on to our third example here, and we'll talk just a bit about the row level security and the options available within there. I know we touched upon that in the first example, but for this, we'll go to a different report here. What we're going to be looking at is another report within the same workspace. And once this loads, we can see that we have a report, and I've named it RLS for, if you can guess, for row level security. So this report does have row level security enabled. For reports with row level security, these options are required. If I were to click next and try to access the report, it's going to tell me that I do need to pass that information in. Coming back to the workspace, and let's open up that RLS report and open up the data model that's associated with it. And there we can see the different roles that are assigned. So the idea of this report is that it does have customer information. It is restricted based on region. So the idea is we have certain customer representatives in certain regions, and they should only be able to see customers that are within their region. So we have a US and a Canada region. If you're in the US, you should only be able to see US. If you're in Canada, you should only be able to see US results here. So to add the row level security options, we're going to first start with the username, and then we're going to actually enter in the role, the same role that we see in the data model here, to emulate that user's role when we run this report in QuerySurge. The custom data field that applies to reports that may be sourced from Azure Analysis Services, since this is being sourced from our SQL Server data mart, we don't need to enter anything into there. Now, what we should see is, once this report loads, is that we should only see the views of a customer rep from Canada. And here we can see that all the customers are part of that country region, Canada. If I myself come over to the report, since I'm an admin of this report, I can see all of the different data points in here. So within the customer, the row level security settings, we can also develop tests that will verify the security restrictions that we may have in place for our Power BI reports. So not only can we just test the data of the validations, but we can test the different filtering mechanisms, and we can also, with the row level security options in the wizard, be able to test those options as well. And as we can see, if we were to input that information into our query pair, we get the SQL statement that it can be utilized to run this query pair and test that data. And these parameters specify that directly in our query pair there. So that I think pretty much does it for what I wanted to showcase today. Again, if you want to learn more, head on over to QuerySurge.com. You'll be able to view a replay of this demo and explore any of the other features and options we have available for QuerySurge. So thank you everyone for your time. I'll pass it back to Bill now for the question section.
Thanks, Mike. Well, we'll now take some questions, so please type any questions you have into chat if you haven't already done so. In the meantime, I think Chris Thompson has some questions for Mike. Chris, all yours.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, we got a few questions for you, Mike. The first question is, can BI report users get notified by QuerySurge if there's an issue found with the data?
Yes, absolutely. So QuerySurge itself offers several different options to notify both search tool and external users, stakeholders in your organization. I actually have configured and set up email notifications that can be sent out directly from QuerySurge. So for the test that we've just run on this webinar demo, you can see that we can get email reports, and that can be configured to go out to anyone in your organization. QuerySurge also has the capability to set up and configure webhooks. And I'll just come over now to the QuerySurge website and pull up our knowledge base. We can find all different types of information on QuerySurge and type in webhooks. And in here you have information on different webhooks that can be set up to notify users of the test results within QuerySurge. So anything from setting up a Teams notification to a Jira webhook can all be configured in QuerySurge to notify the users of any types of failures within your tests.
All right, thank you, Mike. Next question is, are the source queries generated by AI in any way?
In my particular example, I did craft and write these queries, but as I mentioned in our slide presentation, the AI component of QuerySurge can certainly help with that. So it's just, if you have any interest in AI and AI generating SQL queries, you check out our previous webinar on the AI utility. Just to sort of summarize real quick, based on the mapping documents and plain text description SQL statements that you want and the transformations that you need, the AI component can craft SQL statements like you see here. So taking that in conjunction with our Power BI wizard, you can find yourself in a really good position to create many different tests in a short amount of time.
All right, great, Mike. Thank you. Next question, is there a way to produce reports of the tests? So I guess you ran some tests through scheduling. Can I create reports off of those tests?
Yeah, so QuerySurge does have a full reporting suite. As I mentioned, the email notifications can be configured to trigger and send out and report information on the tests anytime they complete, or based on any other different actions within QuerySurge. There is also a full reporting suite module available in QuerySurge where we can run different types of reports against our test executions, and all those reports can be shared out, exported and shared out to the different team members to inform them of the results.
Great. Next question, what credentials do I need to access the Power BI workspace from QuerySurge?
Yes, so as you can see, I have my connections set up already. The connections themselves, really connections to any data source, can be configured in the QuerySurge administration module under the connections section. And we do have a connection wizard that walks you through that setup. So anything from your flat files to SQL Server to, as we see here, all the different BI technologies that we support can be configured and set up using this wizard. The way we can connect, and there's two ways to do it. One is via the master user. You can set up a master user to execute these reports, or the other way is, the recommended way is to set up a service principal and utilize a service principal to access the different reports. And that service principal can then be granted access to the different workspaces under test. And information on how to configure and set up both of those options are available on our QuerySurge knowledge base.
All right, thanks, Mike. Next question, is there any kind of restriction on the length or size of the source or target queries?
In most cases, QuerySurge will allow you to input as much query text. Yeah, I guess, is that the return of the query or the actual SQL statement itself? There is I guess, a large size large textual restriction on how long you can input into a QuerySurge as far as, the text that you're putting in here. But I think it shouldn't be anything that would limit you in your efforts for wanting to pull back that data that you need for testing of your BI report. In other words, I can't put in 5 billion lines of into here, but anything that's required to pull back information and test should be sufficient for your needs.
All right, thanks, Mike. What about automating these tests through CI/CD pipeline?
Yes, QuerySurge does come with a full RESTful API. With our DevOps for Data option, you can actually, if there are QuerySurge customers out there and you have a QuerySurge instance, or if you're going through a trial right now, you can type in rest-docs to your QuerySurge instance, and we list out in our Swagger documentation the full capabilities of our RESTful API. And this can be utilized to integrate with pretty much any pipeline orchestrator out there to go ahead and kick off test runs, report results back, and with the DevOps for Data add-on, mostly do anything that you can do in the UI, you can do programmatically through our RESTful API.
Thanks, Mike. Next question. Well, it's related to QuerySurge AI, but can the AI create queries based on requests you make in natural human language?
Yes, so the engine is certainly designed to do that. So it will take in plain text or plain English or natural language describing how you want to set up and configure your query, and will return back the SQL syntax that you're looking for in the technology that you're looking for. So if you're specifying SQL Server or MySQL, the AI engine should realize and understand the proper syntax to bring back to you. So definitely very interesting. Certainly the results we see, it certainly makes life as a data tester much easier. So if you are interested in QuerySurge AI, definitely recommend checking out our previous webinar. And if that excites you, reach out and request a private demo, and we'll be happy to show it to you in detail and answer any questions directly.
Thanks, Mike. Next question. Can you check interactions between visualizations? For instance, if you select Europe in one visualization, as opposed to making a selection in the slicer, how could you verify the values in the other visualizations?
So if, so we really view the whole report when we bring up the Power BI wizard. So any slicer impacts, depending on how your report is configured, can impact one report versus the other. You can certainly create separate query pairs to validate the interaction of slicers versus one or the other. And you may end up with several different query pairs that validate all the different visualizations you may have on your report. And those all can be run, as we saw earlier, as part of a test suite to ensure that the interactions and the expectations based off of your requirements and the slicer interactions are happening as you would expect.
All right, thanks, Mike. All right, you showed us the wizard on the BI side. Is there a wizard on the database side to help writing the SQL?
I would think that would sort of relate to the QuerySurge AI offering. So there's no sort of GUI wizard per se for developing transformations. We do have available in QuerySurge a query wizard, and that is certainly useful for things like data migrations, where you can visually do a representation of your source and your target side data sets and do sort of a drag and drop relationship to create SQL queries. In cases where we're discussing testing against a BI report and there are transformations involved, in that case, I would recommend taking a look at QuerySurge AI, because that seems to handle the transformations and the transformations logic a whole lot better, and certainly makes the development of SQL much easier, especially when you're doing it in bulk.
Thanks, Mike. And this next question might be for Bill. It's regarding what's the typical installation cost?
Well, our pricing is on the website. It depends. The typical installation is probably 5 user subscriptions, about 20,000, 21K. But you can get as little as one perpetual user for about 11K.
Yep, and just Bill, so you know, I'm showing on our website, anyone interested in the pricing of QuerySurge, we do have transparent licensing and pricing information available. So if you go to QuerySurge.com and just click on this pricing option up at the top, and view all of our offerings on this site.
Great, thanks, Mike. And what version of QuerySurge did Power BI come out, or the Power BI Wizard come out in?
Ah, yes. So the Power BI Wizard was offered in QuerySurge version 11. So for any of our existing customers out there that are interested and have worked with Power BI before, you're going to want to upgrade to version 11 to get use of this Power BI Wizard.
Thanks,
All
Mike.
right, I think that wraps it up. Chris, thank you for asking the questions. Mike, great demo. Everyone else, thanks again for your time and participation. We'll be sending a follow-up email to you with a link to the recording and our contact information if you have any questions. Thanks again and have a great day.